Perspective, presented by the New Orleans Secular Humanist Association, following our few principles of humanism.
We're committed to the use of science and reason for understanding the universe and for solving human problems. We're skeptical of untested claims of knowledge, but we're open to new ideas.
We are concerned with securing justice and fairness in society and in ending intolerance and discrimination. We are committed to the total separation of religion and government.
We affirm humanism as a realistic alternative to the theologies of despair and the ideologies of violence. We reject the concept of an afterlife and believe in living a full and rewarding life here and now.
We value and respect each individual's right to judge and lead their lives according to their own position, as long as it's respectful of other people, living in a free society.
We hope you enjoy today's program and others in the weeks to follow.
Hello, and welcome to the Humanist Perspective, brought to you by the New Orleans Secular Humanist Association. My name is Beth Deitch, and I'll be your host this evening, and I'm the membership coordinator for NOSHA and on the board of directors. You can go to nosha.org to get more information about us and to learn more about humanism in general. So now I'd like to introduce my guest for today. We have Joyce Vansean, who is the founder and a steering committee member of Indivisible NOLA. So welcome, Joyce.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So for starters, just what is Indivisible and what does it do?
So Indivisible is a nationwide organization made up of chapters all across, independent chapters all across the country. There's, I think, an average now of 3 in every voting district in the United States.
Wow, like even the really red districts,
Yes,
huh?
They are everywhere. And it was founded right after the election by these 2 former congressional aides who wrote this very simple, easy to understand guide of how to resist in the age of Trump, because they wanted to do something to help. And they based it a little bit off of what the Tea Party did. The Tea Party was able to disrupt the government entirely with a small group of people. And they thought they were gathering a small group of people to try and disrupt what Trump was doing. Sort of like me when I started the New Orleans chapter. I thought I was gathering 15 or 20 of my friends.
So when did you start? Was that soon after the national, or was it a little later?
It was right after the inauguration. I went to the Women's March, and I was very inspired by that experience. I went in D.C.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I
So
took
the
my
big,
daughter.
Big one.
That's
Awesome.
right. And then the next weekend was the Muslim ban, the first one. And that was when I said I can no longer sit here and hope that things go well for my brothers and sisters, for people in this country that don't have it as good as I do. I felt that so many people were threatened by this administration. So I started the chapter, and it took over my life really quickly. It did. Sure. I thought it was going to be 15 or so of my friends, and it turned into 1,000, and now we have almost 3,000 members.
Wow.
It's just huge, and now we have a steering committee of 13 amazing leaders that we all make decisions together. We, take the lead on various things, so it's not, it's taken a life of its own. It's amazing.
Yeah. So 3,000 members. Like, how are you counting that?
We go by our Facebook group. Okay. We have and every member is vetted. They answer questions to get in the group because it should be a safe space.
Right.
We've had some, attempted, sort of people who don't belong, don't have share our values, come in the group and try to, sort of.
Like, do they slip in and then you find it when they post?
But we did, yeah. So from the beginning, when it was just me doing it, a lot of members came through, and I was in touch with almost everyone, but some got through. And then after that, even until we got our process really down. So now it's a lot harder, for people to slip through, but at the beginning it was. And they would post, or we would see, one time I saw like a screenshot of something I had posted, especially around the Confederate monuments time. So there was like a screenshot of one of my posts from inside the group. So we knew just at certain times that there had been people who were in, but we've been able to find them a lot of time.
Yeah, I suppose they can still message you though. Do you get much hate or
I
pushback
actually
or no?
really don't.
Good.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I've escaped that, knock on wood, and if it comes my way, I'll deal with it. But I really haven't. I really haven't.
Yeah. So you mentioned about modeling after the Tea Party and learning from the Tea Party strategies,
Yes.
and I actually have the Indivisible Guide. Is this the one you're talking about?
The Indivisible Guide,
This-
that's it.
Yeah, that you can download at indivisible.org.
Yes.
Right?
Indivisible Guide.
Oh, indivisibleguide.org. Well, if you go to indivisible.org, there's
Yeah,
a link.
it directs you. Yeah,
Right,
they've had this whole structure and funding come their way, and they've really produced a lot of tools for the different groups. It's gone from just this simple guide there, because that's why I chose it. It was so easy to understand, so easy to execute. I thought this is something I can do.
Yeah.
And they've really expanded, since this has all taken off.
Yeah, so I have noticed they have a lot of stuff, which is
Yes.
great. I mean, there's scripts for calling your senators about
That's right.
things, and there's, how to do a town hall, and how to do if your person's MIA.
Absolutely, and we've done a lot of that. We
Yeah.
held a town hall for Senator Kennedy in absentia.
Yeah, so you were recently on a plane with Senator Kennedy, right?
I
and
was.
you said you actually got to talk to him?
I did. Well, I mean, I
did that
took
go?
the opportunity. It's funny because people were saying, I don't know how you were so calm and collected. And I said, well, I didn't
Was
want
he
to
in
get
first
I didn't want to
class or
get
coach?
kicked off the plane. So Southwest has a very limited sort of first
okay,
class.
yeah.
He was one of the first people on the plane, and I wasn't far behind him. And as I passed him, I just said, Senator, I hope you'll host a town hall real soon.
And did he answer?
And I kept walking, and as I got further, he was getting louder, and he said, well, why don't you give me a call?
Okay.
And I said, well, I do regularly.
yeah.
He said, well, then why don't you write me a letter? And I said, I do that too. And I should have said, and yes,
Why don't you answer?
I've actually hosted a town hall for you, since you wouldn't host one yourself. But so I didn't want to be shouting on. I didn't want to be kicked off of my plane.
Right. Yeah,
to
you
get
do
to
have to be a
DC.
little. So why is there this focus on town halls? What are you hoping to accomplish through the town halls?
So, I mean,
So it's an individual in general does a lot around town halls.
It does. There's a lot around town halls. There's a lot about contact. It's a lot about just contacting your members of Congress, whether it's through a telephone call, a letter, an email, a text, in town halls, and showing up at their offices. It really is about engaging them, which the obvious thing is that you want them to vote how you want them to vote in Congress. You want them to make decisions that represent your values, your interests, and the interests of the people. But there's really, the secondary, and I think even more powerful thing, especially when you live in such a red state, like we're really not going to always change their minds. Right. So that we don't necessarily measure success just by whether we got them to vote how we wanted them to vote on a particular issue. What we also, the secondary benefit from doing all this is really public education. When we're standing out on Causeway in front of Cassidy's office and people see all the signs and they pass, they think, well, what's going on here? And they might get some information there. They might be prompted to get involved.
Right.
If media covers an event, people will see, they'll hear a different perspective. That's really, the secondary thing.
Right. And when you do something like that, like when you did the Kennedy one, that was with healthcare mostly was going on then?
Yes.
And I guess now would be, if they did one, would be the tax bill.
Yes.
And if people stop and talk to you, do you find that most people know what's going on? Or are you giving them new information? And do they doubt your information?
So, I mean, I generally don't try to convince people that are completely on the other end of the spectrum from me. I don't spend a lot of time doing that. I listen and I gather information on what makes them think the way that they think, and so that we can use that in our strategies. But trying to change individuals' minds who are so far to the right, is not really a good use of time for me. But I do definitely encounter people who aren't exactly sure what's going on. I mean, like, for example, this net neutrality issue, which is just huge to me. I think one of the more important issues that we're facing, because it impacts our ability to move the needle on all these other things that are so important to us, on immigration, on any kind of issue, the tax bill, all of that. If we don't have net neutrality, if that goes south and if that goes the way we fear, then we won't be able to affect and change in any of those areas.
Because it will disrupt your communication network,
Absolutely.
basically.
And I
yeah.
think most people don't really understand what that means, what was
No.
at stake with that
No,
vote.
they'll get mad when they have to pay more for Netflix.
Exactly, exactly. When it starts to change,
They're like, no,
they're
no,
like,
this
wait,
is
what's
our
the-"
streaming service. If
Right.
you want Netflix, you have to pay more.
I have a
They'll be
feeling
like,
that the
"Wait."
term net neutrality is going to become a lot more meaningful to people
Right.
over the next year or
Right.
so.
When they find that certain things they actually
Yeah.
like are going to have extra fees or be slowed
Absolutely.
down or whatever. So now the Tea Party was very defensive, and it does seem that a lot of what Indivisible does is very defensive,
Right.
trying to stop things,
Yep.
as opposed to putting forth a sort of alternate agenda.
Right.
Why is that?
So it depends on who has power, right? So if right now we had, Hillary in the White House and we had a Democratic Congress, we would be spending our time trying to advance our agenda. And my hope and dream is that within the next, 4 years or so, that's what we'll be doing. So in the meantime, right now, and I've actually committed myself to doing this for the rest of my life, no matter who's in office, because I firmly believe that if we had been paying attention like this during the Obama years, that we wouldn't be in this situation. But anyway, as an aside, I think that being defensive is important, and being on the offense is important too. So for us, it's a lot of balls in the air all the time. With this administration, there are constant threats. There are constant demands for our attention.
Crazy of the day.
Yes, there is always something. I mean, right now there's about 4 or 5 things that are absolutely critical on the table. But at the same time, what we have our eye on are the midterms. So that's how we're going to be offensive. It's not going to be trying to advance our agenda with our politicians, but trying to build the power in our base, trying to get people who have not been engaged voters to become engaged, trying to back candidates, find candidates, and support them who would represent our values. So that's how we're being on the offense as well.
And the defense is kind of just trying to hold things off until then.
Absolutely, we're trying
Yeah.
to as much as we can, and there is a little bit of offense too. So, for example, the net neutrality vote happened, the FCC, repealed the regulations, and now we are asking our members of Congress to force a vote so that can be revisited.
Right,
So that's
right.
it's a little bit defensive, but it's also a little bit offensive. Like, we're not going to forget it just because you did this.
Right.
We're not just moving on from
Of course,
that.
our senators are probably very unlikely to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're not going to be our champions in this area.
Yeah, at least my representative's good. I've got
They think that we should really believe that the internet service providers have our best interests in mind, and they're really doing this because regulations kill enterprise. That's the problem.
Right. So, the other thing, obviously, that's going on right now is this tax bill.
Yeah.
And so, is there anything that we can do about that now? It seems like they're going to try and vote on it by Friday, and
Yeah. I just
really
read
trying to get this through.
they really are, and it looks like there's one holdout.
I heard now today that all 52
There's the lady Susan
Collins.
maybe Susan Collins, one of the ones that's been a holdout before in healthcare.
Yeah.
Is now a no or a holdout or a
Really?
maybe or
When
something.
did you hear that?
I just read it. when
Oh,
I was,
maybe. Yeah, okay.
oh my
Because
God.
I'd heard that. Well, I'd heard she'd been promised all sorts of stuff, and McConnell goes and promises these things, but
Right.
then other senators, especially the Freedom Caucus people, are like, "Well, we're not going to give you that."
Right.
So yeah,
So
that's
we'll
maybe a little
see.
infighting, but they'll still.
But also, I read today that our Senator Kennedy, said that if he said to his Democrat friends that we were all probably throwing Frisbee in the quad during Economics 101 if we believe this is a bad bill.
Are you kidding me?
That is what he said.
Because this is basically trickle-down economics. It has never worked. Never once.
He also said they ignored the CBO because the CBO is made up of economists.
Okay, wait, now he just said that you needed to know economics to know what's going on.
Right.
But the economists don't know what's going on.
Don't know what's going on.
It's very...
They must have also been throwing a frisbee in the quad.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the thing that I find so baffling about this is that, it's basically, it's about appeasing their donors, largely.
100%.
Some it's about enriching themselves, but very much about appeasing their donors.
Which then enriches them, I mean.
Right. Well, don't they usually want donors to give them a lot of money because then they can use that money to get votes and to get reelected? But it seems like this bill is so incredibly unpopular that...
Well, so it's unpopular in the moment. I think they count on the short-term memory and the ignorance of their base. And then they also really designed it so that nothing that hurts that badly is going to happen until after the midterms.
Right.
Because then, I mean, you know how divided we are in this country. I mean, we tend to, like everything great that's happening about jobs right now, Trump is taking credit for, when really we have to recognize that was Obama's work. But we like to attribute the negative things to the people we don't like and the positive things to the people that we do like. And they know that. They know that's how we operate in general. And so they think that anything bad that happens, after the midterms will get blamed on whoever is in charge then.
Yeah.
And that we won't remember.
Well, and I suppose, so then what does Indivisible do to try and keep that alive in the midterms? So that's,
So that is
almost a year from now.
Right.
And to remind people.
Well, it's funny that you say that because we just had a steering committee meeting, and that was one of the overriding thoughts was it will be our job to make them wear this tax bill around their necks through the midterms and beyond. We are not going to let them forget. We are not going to let people forget what was in this bill. Same with net neutrality, for example. When something starts to happen that the public responds to negatively, we are going to remind them who appointed the head of the FCC and who he was and why he wanted this, and that it was allowed by our
So how
Congress.
do you remind people?
That will be through protests, rallies with flyers. We do a lot of public education with our flyers, and that's really, it's geared toward that public audience. But also on social media, just posting and reaching out to people, that building those relationships and spreading the word that way. It really is about personal connection and that handoff of information. But that will continue.
So do you feel like you've had some successes in Indivisible NOLA?
Yes, I do. I feel, so I come from a mental health background. I'm a licensed counselor. For me, seeing the relationships that people are forming and how they show up for each other and they show up to make a difference, and they're going to keep coming back because of these relationships they've formed, and it strengthens this resistance, and I think into the future into something that could be more on the offense, carrying through this vision that we have for what our country can and should be. That to me is, for me, a personal point of pride, seeing all the people that are engaging with each other. But also, they really have had some trouble getting through some of these horrific things they wanted to do, like healthcare. They're having to sneak in some healthcare, basically take out the ACA with this terrible tax bill. We've had success delaying, that over and over. They kept coming back and coming back. And if you just, keep at it, it's been good. We've definitely seen some success with that.
Yeah, that kind of Tea Party strategy there again. Just stop it.
They
What's going on.
They can ignore us, but they really aren't ignoring us. They might look calm, cool, and collected, like it doesn't matter to them. But when they leave a town hall where their constituents are upset and expressing valid concerns that they don't have answers to, that's problematic for them. They know all they care about is getting reelected. And so when we do these things with the protests and the rallies and the signs, they don't want the media paying attention to that. They don't want the public driving by and seeing people out there with signs. That's just bad news for them. So as much as they pretend like they're ignoring us, we know they're not really ignoring us. They really can't.
How do you feel you get treated by the media? Do you feel you get fairly represented when do you get reported on? or
We
ignored.
do. I mean, not as much as we'd like, of course. I would love it if a reporter would show up to every single action that we did, because we think it's important for the public to know. I mean, that's the goal, right, is public information and access to the information. But yeah, I feel like we've been treated very fairly. I have never been misquoted or misrepresented, and I feel like that the spirit of what we're doing definitely has come through. My worst fear would be if the media would represent us as like some sort of angry or violent or trying to cause problems kind of group.
Well,
and we have never
I gotta
been.
tell you that the right-wing media is.
Yeah, they do.
You know what Sean Spicer said? You're like paid AstroTurf bullies.
Right, AstroTurf, right.
Yeah.
Well, so I guess I was thinking of local media
Right,
on our
right,
local group.
right.
Nationally, yeah, I mean, AstroTurf, they
Bullies.
throw that around, bullying, yeah. I mean, and actually our strategy is so much less like bullying than what the Tea Party did. We're not as hateful and angry, and their strategy was really to be that loudest voice in the room and to be so angry and
A lot of them are armed.
and yeah, and our strategy is not that. So we do come at this from a little bit different perspective. But I do
What do you
feel
mean
like
your strategy is not that? Aren't people angry? Aren't you angry?
people are very angry, and we are, but there are definitely boundaries. We feel like we respect. Just like we wish that our president would, the normal rules of decorum. Now, the town hall with Senator Cassidy did get fiery, and I was definitely part of that. But there was never anything that I would say was a personal attacks, or there's boundaries that we respect, just because we try not to be hypocritical in our approaches. What we would wish that the kind of decorum the president would put forth is what we try to put forth as well. We are angry, but we're doing it in a civil way.
Yeah.
Decorum. Yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
It's
so-
dreamy.
So what do you feel like are your biggest challenges right now?
I think apathy, public apathy. I think a lot of what comes down doesn't necessarily affect every person, and it doesn't affect them right now, or they don't see how it affects them right now. And people, as angry as they were upon the election and inauguration, people are moving on with their lives. They're busy, and I understand that completely. So I think my biggest challenge is keeping people engaged, because I believe that what affects one affects us all, and I wish that people felt that more.
You don't feel like people feel empathy?
I think it's like they feel empathy, but they don't feel the urgency, like to give up their Saturday afternoon for something that impacts someone else directly and not them. And that's human nature. I'm not, it's just part of our makeup.
Right.
And for me, I find part of my job is to spread the awareness about how it does impact all of us, and to tell those personal stories about the people that are impacted directly, because I know people do have empathy, and if they really see what's going on and how it impacts another person, they might step up.
Yeah. And interestingly, there's studies that show that if you could tell one or two people's personal stories will have far greater impact on people than saying 10,000 people are so
Exactly.
negatively affected, but they're just sort of abstract.
Yes, and statistics and all that people get so sick of all that, they don't know what to believe. But if a person is saying, this is happening to me right now,
Right.
that is a call to action for most of us. I mean, we're all human beings. We don't like seeing other people suffer unfairly.
Right.
So that, I think, is just the biggest challenge, keeping that people's eye on the prize and feeling like they can make a difference, because that's another whole part
Momentum.
of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
keeping the momentum, keeping people feeling like they can make a difference by showing up.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
at least
th-
until
they're
2018.
needed. Yeah,
Because that's obviously low voter turnout was a huge problem.
huge part of this problem. Yeah,
And I do think appealing to emotion. The other
Absolutely.
side largely did come in on emotions, and
Yeah.
we have not. There is the concept of fake news but people are motivated to believe certain things and seek out certain things, and playing on the emotions
Absolutely.
is what leads people to say, yeah, I believe that, because it sort of validates the way I feel. So what would you say are the most important events that you're working on right now that's coming up?
So the number one thing I would love people to know about is that if Trump does fire Robert Mueller, that we will take to the streets at the federal courthouse building, 500 Poydras. And if the news breaks before 2 p.m., then the gathering will be at 5 p.m. that day.
Yeah.
And if the news breaks after 2 p.m., then it would be at noon the next day.
Yeah.
So that is 100%.
Okay.
It's critical that, and we hope that that's definitely not just an Indivisible thing. People are going to be alarmed and angry, and we want to give them a place to show up in numbers that they can express, this is not normal, this is not okay.
Yeah, well, that's probably an important role too, just to give people an outlet,
Absolutely.
rather than just you don't just rage to your friends and rage on Facebook.
Exactly.
And have no
Armchair
place to
activism
put
is
it.
awesome, but let's take it to the streets
Right,
too. Let's
right.
get up and get together and make something happen.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I've heard rumors that if he does, it's going to be right after Congress leaves, like on the 22nd.
Yes, and right when people are in holiday mode, and that's, really, truly vile thing to do.
Yeah.
But who
And it
would?
seems
I mean,
so obvious too.
it's so. But there really is no pretense anymore from this administration, from Congress, that they're, trying to be that decorum. Like there's no pretense about it at all.
Right.
So to me,
Well,
it wouldn't
all
shock
of
me.
the voters, it seems that. I mean, like this whole thing in Alabama, I'm so grateful that Doug Jones won, but it was such a squeaker, and so many people really just. The fact that so many people would vote for him and just, again, choose not to believe multiple substantiated allegations is, that they clearly don't stand for values as much as just wanting to win.
Right.
So that's what worries me, that even something like firing Mueller, well, if it's not their side, if it's bad for their side, then they just see it as sort of enemy action.
Well, so we realize that 30% of voters that are going to be Trump's base, they're going to support him no matter what, they're going to believe what they want. They're not going to show up. We don't need them to show up.
Yeah.
What we need are people that do find something wrong with it to say, okay, my presence at this thing matters. And that's really what we want to get across.
Well, so we're just about getting to the end here. How would people find you?
So we are at indivisibleNOLA.com, INDIVISIBLE, NOLA.com. And from there, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And if you're not a Facebook person, we put our information out on Instagram and on Twitter as well. But also you can get a daily email with the daily calls and everything that's going on. You can sign up for emails there too. And all of our actions are listed. You can check it every day. Usually there'll be a banner on the front page with something that's the most important, which is right now the firing scenario.
Right. Yeah, it sort of seems like that shouldn't be legal. Really.
And then we're also going to be we're going to be heading up weekly visits to Kennedy's new office.
Where is
That'll
that?
be on Thursdays at noon. That is near, it's downtown. You have to look at our website to get the address, because I don't know off the top of my head, but we'll be there every
we'll check
Thursday
that
at noon.
out. All right, well, thank you very much,
Thank you
Joyce,
so
and
much.
thank all of you for tuning in. We'll see you next time on The Humanist Perspective.